It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the fourth. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a one-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday and welcome back into the pod this week. Tim Leonard and Tyler Rocky got plenty to get to on this Monday episode. We will talk about a big recruiting win for the football program over the weekend. Big defensive lineman out of New Jersey, Kyer Price, committing. A lot to get to on that front. We're going to start out the show, though, talking about something that kind of riled up the fan base on Twitter a little bit, and I don't blame them one bit. It was a coaching ranking that I came across, Ty, reading an Athletic mailbag article. I guess the question was basically posed, who are the guys that could take over the college basketball coaching ranks after Roy Williams and Coach K leave officially after next year? And Brian Hamilton of The Athletic came out with the list of the top 15 coaches right now in college basketball. Jim Boeheim checks in at number 15. It's a tough thing to rank, and he even admits as much in his little blurb, saying basically, I don't even know
I've got the exact words for you, all right?
Okay, great.
It says, I have absolutely no set criteria. I didn't pore over this for hours on end. I almost assuredly forgot someone, and I probably give a little more value to recent accomplishments over a pile of wins amassed across decades, though those clearly matter too. That translates to, I don't care about these rankings. Suck it, haters. If you disagree, I don't care. So that, again, people are going to get angry. And
no matter what,
I would not agree wholeheartedly with this list, but
no.
At the end of the day, I don't think Brian Hamilton cares about this list either.
So here's the list for anyone that has not seen it, and also you can go check out our Twitter page at LO_Syracuse. We tweeted out a screenshot of the list, so if you have any questions throughout the podcast, want to reference anyone, just pull up our Twitter page. That'll maybe help things out. But the list in full. Number 1, Mark Few. Number 2, Jay Wright. 3, Bill Self. 4, Scott Drew of Baylor. 5, Tony Bennett. 6, Chris Beard, who's the new head coach at Texas. 7, Leonard Hamilton. 8, John Calipari. 9, Kelvin Sampson. Dana Altman at 10. Tom Izzo at 11. Followed by maybe the most questionable entry on this list, in my opinion, Matt Painter at 12. Head coach of Purdue, for anyone that doesn't know. Juwan Howard at 13, Bob Huggins 14, one spot ahead of Jim Boeheim, who rounds out the top 15. And all 15 that were mentioned, Jim Boeheim at 15. So he's behind Bob Huggins, which that got a couple funny responses. I think Lucas Satchel tweeted us and said, does he not know that Boeheim's record
What's my
is
record
6
against
and
Bob
1?
Huggins? Huh?
Yeah,
What's my record against Bob Huggins?
Yeah, get Donna to fact check it, as Boeheim was asking in that one legendary press conference. But I do think this list is, well, I agree with the names at the top, and I'm not expecting Jim Boeheim to be inside the top 5 per se. He should be in the middle of the pack. He should be 7 or 8. And I think we got a good response from Carter Chase. He said Izzo should be 7th and JB 8th. I think that's about where I fall.
I think, yeah, Tom Izzo, listen, Jim Boeheim got fleeced on these rankings. I can give you a list of 4 or 5 guys that I would definitely put Boeheim ahead of, and then a couple more that you could argue. But Izzo got fleeced, man. I mean, I started digging into all of these guys' coaching resumes. Tom Izzo has made every single NCAA tournament since 1998. Over that span, he has 8 Final Fours and a national championship. The last Big Ten national championship, unless you count Maryland. But the fact that he isn't higher is baffling to me. Like, he's one of those guys who, we said Jim Boeheim probably can't get into the top 5. Izzo might be able to get into the top 5, given the resume and all that stuff. So I was confused by that, but the Jim Boeheim, I mean, Matt Painter, seriously, if you think Matt Painter is better than Jim Boeheim, I'm gonna need you to piss in a cup. Seriously, what is that? Matt Painter, he's gone to 6 straight tournaments and no Final Fours. I don't get that one bit. And even
he's such an average coach. It's baffling.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and you and I love Leonard Hamilton. Love Leonard Hamilton.
Yeah, no Final Fours, though.
No Final Fours. He's made 4 straight tournaments, but before that, the prior 4 years, he made 0 tournaments. So I don't see how you could put him potentially over a guy like Jim Boeheim either.
So my rankings, I did a kind of the same thing. I just spitballed what would be my rankings if I did. It's a challenging exercise because how much
did you put a little disclaimer in front that you have no set criteria? You didn't pour over this for hours on end. You probably forgot someone. Suck at haters.
Yeah, pretty much. My criteria is I value March more than anything. And that's probably why I think Tom Izzo and Jim Boeheim should be a lot higher than what I see in these rankings. Well, I understand, and why I think Bill Self is frankly overrated. I understand Bill Self is a great coach. He's probably one of the best offensive out-of-timeout minds in the game. But
well, on the note of Bill Self, I think there's value to getting to March, right? Yeah. And that guy's been to 17 straight tournaments in the Big 12. So I think that is super impressive. And I would put him in my top 3 too.
I think he's in the same tier as Boeheim because he only has 1 national title. He's probably in a better situation in terms of gathering recruits, and he's had better players than Jim Boeheim recently. I've never been all in on him. I think he's a very good coach, but we're nitpicking here. We're talking about top 5 in the country. I think definitely you have to put Jay Wright, Tony Bennett, Mark Few in the top 3. Now, you could say Mark Few hasn't won it yet, but at Gonzaga, I think it's been very impressive what he's done. Scott Drew has now won it, so I think he's inside the top 5. Great rebuilding job at Baylor. Got to give him a lot of credit. And then I'm very high on Chris Beard and what he's probably going to do at Texas, so he would probably round out my top 5. Then for me, it's another tier of the Tom Izzos, Jim Boeheim, Bill Self, John Calipari, because I really don't think there's a whole lot of arguments to move those guys inside the top 3 as it stands right now. Maybe top 5, but maybe I'm just lower on Bill Self. I do think Izzo's probably a little bit ahead of Boeheim, but it's close for me.
So some of the names that I thought Boeheim should be ahead, clearly, okay? I've got Matt Painter, Leonard Hamilton.
You think?
Yeah. I think we've poured over those 2. Kelvin Sampson, I think definitely Boeheim should be ahead of. Juwan Howard. Now, at the end of this whole exercise, like, let's give it 7-10 years. Maybe Howard is ahead of Boeheim, but I think right now, listen, he's been a college coach for 2 seasons, one of which there was no tournament, and the other he went to the Elite 8. So, I mean, he can say, you want to see these NBA rings all you want, but I still have Jim Boeheim ahead of Juwan Howard, who's only going to be entering his 3rd season.
As you
and then
should,
Bob Huggins. Yeah. And then Bob Huggins, too. And I know you love Chris Beard, but I would maybe put Boeheim ahead. Now, Beard, again, he's very young in this whole thing. He's been a head coach for only 6 years and has been to the tournament in 5 of those seasons and also has gone to a national championship game as well. So I'm not here to discredit, but it does feel like the recency bias of it all would favor Chris Beard. But at the same time, if you look at the totality of it all, I would still probably put Boeheim ahead, even given the recency bias. I think the career resume trumps the recency bias of what Chris Beard has done.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to compare them. All right, guys, are you serious about cooking? Well, if you are, you should invest in your kitchen tools. That is extremely important, and Made In's cookware and kitchenware products are used by thousands of the world's best chefs. That is your best option right now for investing in those kitchen tools. I have tried some of their products. They sent us a couple knives. They're really good. They source the finest material and partner with renowned craftsmen to make premium kitchen tools available directly to you without the markup, which is nice. They're very, very friendly price-wise. Made In products are made to last, and they offer a lifetime guarantee. They have 28,000 plus 5-star reviews, and their products are used by some of the world's best chefs at Michelin star restaurants around the world. And right now, Made In is offering our listeners 15% off your next order. It's a promo code for you. Locked On is the promo code for 15% off. That's madeincookware.com/locked on and use promo code locked on.
These are the final seconds.
The lead in the 4th. Can they hold on to it?
That do or die time. And everything rides on one shot. But it isn't going to be that easy.
And it's a 1-point game.
This is down to the wire.
They're going to try the three-point attempt.
One shot to take you to the top. One winner. This is clutch basketball. That's the NBA playoffs. That's game.
And I think that's the most challenging thing about this exercise is, yes, Juwan Howard is an up-and-coming coach that I think if I was projecting best coaches in 10 years, I definitely would have Chris Beard top 5, and I'd have Juwan Howard up there, and I'd have Nate Oates
would probably be on the list, yeah.
Right.
Musselman, all those
Mick
guys.
Mick Cronin, I think, will probably get a national title at some point. Like, there's a lot of very good coaches in college basketball. We all know this. So it's a tough thing to sort of compare Chris Beard to Jim Boeheim. And then you can also get into, well, Boeheim has been on, in a lot of people's minds, should have been on the hot seat, and he should have played Kadari Richmond more, and maybe he wasn't maximizing the regular season rosters to the degree that he could. But I just care about March more than anything, and that's why I still have a lot of respect for Chris Beard, is he has made it to a final with the Texas Tech team that didn't really have any top 100 recruits, and he's just maximized talent, and then got it done in March as well.
I look at this as a lot of it, and you say how much you value March. Well, I feel like a lot of this list values the October through February period. And again, if you win a national championship, you see your name bumped near the top. I mean, you look at, with the exception here of Izzo and I would even say Calipari, if you have won a national championship, your name has catapulted near the top of the list. So...
And Boeheim.
And Boeheim, yeah. But, you look at Self, Wright. Mark Few hasn't, which kind of discredits everything that I'm saying, but he's won a share of the WCC every year since he took over in 1999, except for one, has gone to 2 Final Fours. So he's got the pedigree. It's very... I don't care what school you're coaching at, what recruits you're getting. It's tough to win a share of the conference every single year for over 2 decades. Right. That is unbelievable.
No, it's impressive.
So I agree with Brian Hamilton. I do think Mark Few. And again, the whole concept of lists. People usually rank the top 5 and then just kind of throw darts for the next however many teams or players or coaches are being mentioned. So I think Tony Bennett, definitely up and coming, has the national championship to his name, but let's say he doesn't get back to another national and win another national championship, but has maybe 1 or 2 Final Fours sprinkled in there over the next, 10 years? Is he on the same level as Boeheim? Because, you look at Jay Wright, he's got the 2 national championships, he's been to 8 straight tournaments, he has done it, and he's done a really good job recruiting, but I think he's done a really good job coaching, because you look at a lot of those guys, and a lot of them are guys who redshirted for a little bit and then finally burst onto the scene.
Yeah, I think Jay Wright and Tony Bennett are 1 and 2 for me just because they've won it. And Jay Wright, it wasn't that long ago that Villanova was more known for choking in the NCAA tournament. And when they lost to NC State early, they lost to UConn early, then they won it all, and now they've had one of the best runs of the past 5 or 6 years of any program. So you got to give them a lot of credit. Tony Bennett, I think Jim Boeheim has gone on record and said he's the best coach in the country. Now, Jim Boeheim has also beat Tony Bennett more times than Tony Bennett probably should have allowed Jim Boeheim to beat him. And he's won a huge Elite 8 game against him where his team frankly panicked in the later stages of that game and didn't have any answers for the press the year after that, which is kind of puzzling. So there's flaws to all of these. But I do think Boeheim should be higher, and he should be in the middle of the pack, and putting him at 15 is pretty much disrespectful to what he's accomplished, because not only just his totality of his work and the fact that he's won more games than anyone on this list, but if you want to go recency bias, they made the Sweet 16 last year, and he again proved the naysayers wrong in the tournament and got the most out of a roster that probably shouldn't have made it that far.
And I think a lot of it has to come down to the fact that, and again, this is part of the list being a lot of credit is being given to your performances from October through February. Syracuse since 2014 hasn't been higher than an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. So I think part of that goes into it. So who are the coaches in your mind that he should be ahead of? Obviously, we've kind of poured over Juwan Howard and Matt Painter, but who are the ones that you would bump Boeheim above?
So I had Kelvin Sampson leading my next tier at number 10. I'm pretty high on Kelvin Sampson. I think you know this, and I have a lot of respect for just his X's and O's at Houston and what they produce there. So I think he's good, but I don't think you can't put him ahead of Jim Boeheim right now.
Here's
Bob
what
Huggins,
I would say
same
with
thing.
Kelvin Sampson. If you dropped Jim Boeheim on a middling AAC team, would he make the tournament within the first 3 years? And I think almost assuredly yes.
Would he make a Final Four, though?
But that took Kelvin Sampson, 7, 8 years to do that?
I really don't know how long he's been there. I thought it was maybe 4 or 5 years.
He's been back 7 years, plus the 8th year is the COVID year.
Yeah, I mean, Houston also was a disaster when he got there. So I give him credit for that.
Houston, the year that he took over, Houston had just finished 6th in the conference.
That's pretty
what
terrible.
I believe is like a 10-team conference.
Yeah.
That's not terrible, but it's middle of the conference.
I mean, they have some pedigree, but they had hit rock bottom when he got there, for sure. And he had a lot of... I mean, it's taken him a while, but I think it would have taken anyone a while. And he's honestly been pretty quick. To make a Final Four with Houston is pretty impressive. Now, he got sort of lucky, you could say, in the games that fell their way to get to the Final Four. Yeah, but, I mean, that you could argue
and then when
the
he
same
got
thing about
there,
Syracuse.
He was not competitive in that Final Four game.
Yeah, I think Jim Boeheim's ahead of Kelvin Sampson. Don't get me wrong. I think he's definitely one of those up-and-coming coaches that, if anything, for me, is a little bit underrated. Other coaches, I mean, Dana Altman, same thing. I think he's, if anything, underrated, but you can't put him ahead of Jim Boeheim. So I think you have to throw him behind Boeheim. Howard, we mentioned. Really, I mean, as I said, even John Calipari, Bill Self, I think Jim Boeheim has an argument to be ahead of them, because then it gets into how much do you value recruiting and how much do you value coaching on the court. And obviously, if we're ranking recruiters, John Calipari, now he's had some help, but he's definitely right up there in the country. But they are coming off a 9-win season, whatever they won last year. Weird year. A lot of things went against them, but that's a train wreck. So it's really hard to ignore that if you're playing recency bias into it.
Well, with Calipari, I look at it, okay, he's been at Kentucky 12 years. Been in the tournament 10 of those years. 4 of those years he's won a Final Four, and 1 is a national championship. So to me, I have John Calipari as a top tier. And you can say, oh, well, I mean, Jim Boeheim does it with less sometimes. Well, John Calipari also took a team that, what was it, an 8 or a 9 seed, and took it to the national championship game as well.
No, I think he's really good, and Jim Boeheim's really good. I just don't think
we're
that
talking about top
he's head and shoulders
a
above
coach of 350 teams. But at the end of the day, I would still put Cal ahead of Boeheim.
Yeah. Now, if you're making what are the coaches, like top coaches projecting and incorporating that, then I can see why Juwan Howard, you have him higher. I just can't get all the way there with jumping him over Jim Boeheim.
I can't either. I'm with you on that one. I don't see a world where Juwan Howard... Now, if we're talking about you're playing out one season and one season only, okay, maybe Juwan Howard, you would take him over Jim Boeheim. But let's say you have a roadmap for 5 seasons. A roadmap for 5 seasons, I'm probably taking Boeheim. Quick break to tell you about the best protein bar on the market. You know it. It is Built Bar. And guess what? Right now, they've got a limited time flavor. That's right. You got to get in on it this week only. It is the Built Grasshopper Cookie flavor. And this one is just like your classic Thin Mint cookie, but packed into a Built Bar. 150 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 5 grams of sugar. There are so many great flavors of Built Bar out there, but this one in particular, you got to get it on now because it's only available from July 6th through 9th. So get in. Maybe pack it into a mix box as well. There are a number of fantastic Built Bar flavors. My favorite, of course, is the peanut butter brownie. You've heard me talk about that Built Bar on the show all the time. Use Built Bar to train like the pros because Built Bar is now the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, that's Locked On for 15% off at Built.com.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
All right, well, let's shift gears now to football. Big recruiting win over the weekend. Kyer Price, defensive lineman, top 700 guy according to 24/7 Sports, and we're not big ratings guys, so he also passes the offer sheet test for sure. Took an official visit to West Virginia. Seemed like they were one of the front runners along with Syracuse here. Indiana had an offer out to him. Pittsburgh, Rutgers, and he's a New Jersey guy. He took an unofficial to Rutgers. And they've had a good stretch of recruiting. So still, even though it's Rutgers, Greg Schiano's back. To get a local kid away from Rutgers is something. Maryland, Boston College, Purdue, Kansas. It's a good offer sheet. And he's the highest rated guy so far in this 2022 cycle, which is continuing to get better and better, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because that's where they've picked up 7 of their 8 recruits so far. I'd like to see some offense, but I think this was never going to be an offensive-minded class, and this is a huge win for the Orange.
And it's interesting, too, because, okay, this is the top-rated guy in the class, and when it's all said and done, will he be the top-rated guy in the class? Who knows? But usually when you crack through and start to get some of these guys that are top 700, you get 1 or 2 others that are right around their talent within close proximity. So I'm excited to see what's next. What is the momentum that you've got right now? Nick Monroe has been fantastic. I think Makai Mason, we talked about him on the show a little bit ago, but that kind of started it. This is the continued push and momentum, and maybe there's 2 or 3 others out there that are higher rated that'll start to look at the Orange and maybe even pick Syracuse as well. But no, this is, again, we're always high on the offer sheet, and the rankings are nice, but at the end of the day, how can you tell the difference between a defensive lineman in New Jersey and an offensive guard in Oregon? Like, how can you tell me that there's an 100 spot gap between the two of them?
Right.
I just don't get it. But
Especially
I know they've got their
after
grading system and all that.
Yeah, especially after COVID seasons. I mean, in this case, he's a kid who had his season pushed back to the spring, played late in the spring. It was a shortened season, but put up ridiculous numbers. He's kind of a tweener as is because he's a guy that's 6'2" and right around 255 pounds. So you don't know, is he a linebacker in the future? Is he an edge rusher? Does he bulk up and play in the middle? My guess is he's going to be an edge rusher, and his best trait is just getting to the quarterback. He seems to be very good at shedding tackles, good at the point of contact. If he bulks up a little bit, I'm really excited about his future as just a pass rusher in this 3-3-5 defense. But it has been sort of a shift in identity to the defensive side of the ball out-recruiting the offensive side of the ball. When Dino came here, I really thought they had a chance to build a wide receiver U or just sort of score on those special positions on the offensive side, those flashy positions. And here we are, 7 of 8 in this class have been on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's a lot of credit to Nick Monroe and Tony White because they have blossomed into probably our 2 best recruiters as it stands on the coaching staff. Definitely Nick Monroe because he's more specifically doing a lot of the recruiting, but I'm really excited about the way the defense is shifting, and I just hope the offense can kind of follow suit in this class, and that'll make it a very nice class.
I remember when, and I think you and I had this conversation a while ago, but when you saw all of these guys pop up out of nowhere and become productive, I think of guys like Jamal Custis and Steve Ishmael and Amba Editawo. You didn't necessarily need the spectacular to be good at Syracuse. You didn't need those high-rated recruits to be a good receiver at Syracuse, an All-American level receiver at Syracuse. So I always kind of said I would like to see more of a shift to the defensive side of the ball in recruiting. Now, I do think you need to beef up that offensive line. That needs to be a priority, I think, for the remainder of the cycle. But at the end of the day, there are a couple of important things in football. We know you need a quarterback, right? Haven't addressed that in this class quite yet. You need someone to protect said quarterback, right? And you also need someone who can go get after their quarterback. And that's the part that so far in this cycle, Syracuse has capitalized on. When you look at Price, when you look at Bassett, Makai Mason, you're getting guys who are going to be getting after the QB. And you need guys that can do that on your team. And I think that's been, I know the numbers have sort of been there and supported that they're getting after it, but the sack numbers haven't necessarily been there. We've seen the sack numbers go down, and I want to see more of an emphasis on the defensive line to continue to build up and get this Syracuse pass rush to an elite level.
And I should note, they did make the top 7 for a very talented wide receiver in Jordan Anthony over the weekend. He's announcing on July 27th. Don't feel great about it, though. It seems like Ole Miss is probably the front runner there, but worth noting maybe he is the guy that is the first big score on the offensive side of the ball, and hopefully this falls. And as I said, I never expected numbers-wise for this to be an offensive-minded class. I think that's worth noting. But I would like to see them get a quarterback soon. I'd like to see them kind of just catch up a little bit on the offensive side of the ball. Another thing that's
especially
interesting,
offensive line, especially the offensive line. You can, as evidenced by last year, you can never have enough depth.
Because on paper, it doesn't seem like they need a ton of offensive linemen this year, but I'd like quality for sure. They could use quality offensive linemen if they can get them. And then also,
and think about the transfer portal too. As easily as you can bring them in, it's just as easy for them to leave.
Right. So, and we saw even, Patrick Davis leaves to go play Canadian pro football. I think it was last week. So guys are leaving, and that's going to happen. I mean, you can't really plan for it. Another interesting thing with this one is it's a New Jersey kid. And I think Dino has talked about recently how he wants to get back into New Jersey more. Mike McAllister ran some good numbers on basically what percentage of recruits have come from each state so far in the Dino era. This is not counting class of 2022. But Florida is the front runner. They had almost 18% of Syracuse recruits have come out of the state of Florida. And then New York and New Jersey were at 7.14%, tied in second place. I would like to see that number rise. And I understand why Florida has been successful for us. I don't necessarily think it needs to come from a knockdown in Florida. And actually, they only got one guy from the last cycle in 2021 from Florida. And I think a lot of that is because of COVID and them not being able to do their necessary recruiting trips and everything. So maybe the Florida number will, if anything, go up, which is fine. But I'd like to see New Jersey and New York go up, those local products, and this is a big win in that area.
Specifically New Jersey. New York is nice. And again, we talk about you want to get the best of the best in New York, but if you're just getting New York guys for the sake of getting New York guys, I don't think that's the best strategy. Now, if you're getting the best of the best, the guys that land in the top 300, land in the top 600, and have strong offer sheets across the board, those are the guys that you want, especially when they're the Buffalo area, Rochester guys, stuff like that. But New Jersey, we've seen them churn out number 1 prospects in the entire country. I'm not saying that Syracuse is ever going to land that guy, because I don't think you or I are going to see a Syracuse team that gets the number 1 overall commit in the country during our lifetimes. But eventually you're going to see guys that are top 150. And I mean, I look at DeVito, right? Top 300 guy, one of the better quarterbacks in the country. There's a ton of talent in the state of New Jersey, and it's right in your backyard. So you should be able to get some major recruiting wins there. That's where you dip your toe in and you can get the guys that are the best of the best in New Jersey. Maybe not the premier elite guy, but if you can get the third best guy there, the fifth best guy there, and steal him away from Rutgers, that would be a huge recruiting win for you.
Yeah, and I think they're trending more in that direction. Deuce Chestnut, New Jersey. LaQuint Allen, the running back, who is the only offensive player so far in this 2022 class to commit, New Jersey. So I like the way that they're trending in terms of regaining that. Speaking of Tommy DeVito, tomorrow on the show, a ranking came out, Pro Football Focus, all their grades so far of all of the FBS quarterbacks in the country. And Tommy DeVito was ranked on that list, and probably kind of a disappointing ranking, maybe as expected so far, but we will tell you where he was ranked, our thoughts on that, some of the guys that he's around and his potential and what he has to do to elevate his ranking this year and what we should take away from that ranking, plus any other things that come up here between now and Tuesday. We will be giving you podcasts throughout the week, every single weekday here. So subscribe to the show if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Giannis doesn't let Milwaukee go gently into that good night. Here's what our local experts are locked on today. The Milwaukee Bucks blow out the Phoenix Suns in Game 3 of the NBA Finals on the back of a second consecutive 40-10 performance. from Giannis Antetokounmpo, final score 120-100. Today on Locked On Bucks, our local expert Kane Pittman discusses the growing legend of Giannis, Jrue Holiday's X-Factor performance, and Devin Booker's struggles. A lot of baseball to pay attention to. The MLB draft began on Sunday. Monday night, the MLB's All-Star ceremonies begin with the Home Run Derby. Get up to speed on everything by subscribing to the Locked On MLB podcast today. Back to the NBA Finals. Should the Phoenix Suns be worried? The answer is on the Locked On Today podcast. All the sports news you need in under 20 minutes. Follow Locked On Today, wherever you get podcasts. Local experts on the biggest stories. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.